Today, I'm going to see if I can improve the air intake temperatures on the K&N Typhoon intake system when idling or driving in the city. Basically, any non-highway speed driving for this. And the problem is that when you're sitting idling, it's pulling in either hot air from the engine bay, or it's possible that this is heat soaking and just not doing a good enough job of keeping the heat from transferring over to the intake. I'm going to try to block that by installing this aluminized heat barrier from Thermo-Tec. So it's got adhesive on it. I'm just gonna cut it and fit it to the back side of the shield here. You want it to be facing the engine. Also, you're gonna wanna wear gloves because this probably has fiberglass in it and you don't wanna get that in your skin. All right, the heat shield's out. I'm about ready to bring it inside, clean it up with some alcohol on the side and on the underside, and then apply the heat barrier. Now, when I removed this, the first thing I did was take the two bolts out from the back of here. This was sitting on the back side here using a hex key, and then I was able to work it by reaching my hand inside and then kind of pull it out to remove this. Then I took out the three 10mm bolts here and then lifted it out. Now, the bolt on this piece here is a lot longer than the rest because it's going to be running through a spacer that just sits right here. So be careful not to knock that spacer down when you take the heat shield out or reinstall it. I've taken the rubber strip off of here and then I laid it down on the backside and used a Sharpie to trace the pattern out. And then I cut a little bit of this off of here and applied it on the end so I can see if the rubber will actually fit over it, and fortunately it will. That will make trimming this easier because all you have to do is trim it to fit to the edge. When you're cutting the pattern out, don't cut the bottom off of here because we're going to try to wrap it around on the underside. For this edge here, I just lined it up like this and then I rolled it forward so that I could trace my line out on that. I have the pattern cut out. I'm leaving the holes in place here until after I've actually attached it to the heat shield, and then I'll take an X-Acto blade and then cut it out. I'm also going to use an X-Acto blade to just score the plastic underneath of this line that I've drawn, so that when I pull the backing off, I'm only going to pull the backing off of the top half here and leave it in place here. That way, when this is attached, I can then fold this over and then use my marker to figure out, where do I need to cut it here and then here, so that when both the ends fold over, it's a nice little single seam that runs here. So now this is attached to the heat shield. You can see I still have the backing on this side. Now, I didn't line it up perfectly when I applied it, so there's a little bit of a gap there, but that's okay because the rubber seal is going to cover that up. Do not pull this back off because you will destroy it. You do have a little bit of room to work with. Just be careful when you line it back up because this thing will stick and it'll stay. For the underside, I've drawn these two lines here. I'm just going to cut up to the top here to the corner, and then this bottom piece I'm going to fold over and apply it here. For this side, I folded it in half here and then drew a line, and then at the top here I made a mark here, folded it over, made a mark here, and then followed the mark on the other side and then drew another line here. So once I cut this piece out, when I fold this over, it'll make a nice seam right here. You should have a nice seam just like that when you're done. Do the same thing on the other side. Just fold it in half here, draw your line, and then cut it. When you're done, it's going to look like this, but that's okay. We're going to take the piece that we cut off of here, and we'll use it to fill in this spot down here. Again, please be sure you're wearing gloves when you do this process. Alright, so take the little scrap that you cut off here, put it to the edge, fold it, draw a line, and then flip it over on the other side, and then draw your line here. So now we've got our little piece that we can cut out to fit that spot. Take the square edge of the remaining piece and place it right here into this little spot, and then trace around on the back side with a Sharpie all around to the edge. And then you can see I've taken it and I've made a mark right there in the middle that you can see. And then I flipped it around and just drew a line from that mark to the end. One last piece to do. I've taken the other square edge of the scrap that's left, the smaller side, and placed it down here at this corner, and then traced it on this side. So I'm just going to cut along this piece just to isolate it from here because it's a little unwieldy working with this large piece. And then once we do that, we'll figure out where to cut on the bottom part here. Now that we have a smaller piece to work with, just line it up at the edge, fold it right down here, draw your line, and cut it. And there you go. So the underside, you're not going to see it all, but it is completely covered, and the side that will be seen when you look in the engine bay, it's going to be nice and smooth like this. All that's left to do now is to take my X-Acto blade and just run it along the inside edges of all of the holes on there and then on the bottom, and then reinstall this. Here it is with all the holes cut out and the rubber reinstalled. It did fit over top of the barrier very easily, but I still tried to push the backside of the rubber on first and then roll it over top of the foil to avoid damaging it. But I think you shouldn't have any issues getting it back on. I did start with the rubber on this side first and then worked my way around very carefully. Alright, let's get this installed and see how it looks. And it's back in place now. Be careful when you reinstall this not to accidentally scratch the foil on here because it will scratch easily. Also, I would recommend continuing to wear gloves through the whole process because there are little bits of fiberglass around here. In fact, I think I have to throw my clothes right into the washing machine after this because I can feel something scratching through my pant leg. Just don't touch your skin, don't rub your eyes. From what I remember working with fiberglass a while ago, it sucks to get it in your skin. Alright, so now, while it's still 70 degrees out, I'm going to go for a drive with my torque app and see if this makes a difference. I've either improved the performance of the air intake system or I've just spent money to make it look pretty. Let's find out. I just got home. Let's see what the temperature is on this side. So 212, and on the other side 113. So it's doing an excellent job of blocking the heat coming off of the engine. So this was definitely worth it. I hope this helps you out if you were thinking about wrapping your K&N heat shield as well. Thank you for watching.